I didn't leave the house the day it all came undone. I didn't scream, throw plates, or storm out into the rain like some cliché from a poorly written drama. No, I sat quietly at the kitchen table, the one we bought together in happier times, and stared at a spreadsheet that confirmed my entire financial world had vanished. The numbers didn't lie. My savings, $214,603 to be exact, were gone. Transferred, withdrawn, reallocated into accounts that didn't bear my name. I stared at the bank statements with the same numb disbelief as a man watching his own house burn down in slow motion, unable to move, unable to look away. It had started 6 months earlier, subtly. My wife, Claire, began insisting I take a break from the business I had co-founded, citing burnout and my declining health. She was persuasive, almost maternal. "You've worked too hard for too long," she'd said, brushing my hair back like she used to when we were in love. "Let me take care of things for a while." At the time, I had convinced myself she was right. I had been grinding for 12 years, building the consulting firm from scratch with my best friend, and if I'm honest, I was tired. So tired I didn't notice the first signs of betrayal. Claire had a background in finance. She offered to oversee the accounts temporarily while I recovered. The firm had been doing well, and I trusted her implicitly. An error I would come to regret with every ounce of my being. Within weeks, she had charmed her way into becoming an unofficial co-signer on one of our business accounts. It was just a technicality, she said. Just easier for paying vendors. I didn't question her. I should have. 3 months later, I was gently pushed out of my own company. My co-founder cited increasing volatility and mental fatigue. Claire had been feeding him stories behind my back. Erratic behavior, poor decision-making, fabricated financial missteps. She provided doctored emails and printouts. I was stunned when he confronted me, blindsided by how far she had gone. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. He bought out my share at a suspiciously low valuation, and I, too humiliated and disoriented to fight back, signed the paperwork in silence. Claire filed for divorce the following week. She left with a practiced grace, as if she had rehearsed the moment. "It's just not working anymore," she said, her tone almost apologetic. She packed in a single day. I watched her carry out box after box, our life together reduced to fragments, coffee mugs, throw pillows, picture frames. She kissed me on the cheek before she left, and I stood there like a ghost. It wasn't until a month later, while digging through the wreckage of my bank accounts, that I discovered the true scope of her betrayal. My inheritance, left to me by my mother, who had passed 3 years earlier, was gone. All of it. Claire had gained access to the account during our marriage, moved the funds, and liquidated them just days before filing for divorce. And the kicker? She'd used the money to purchase a home. Not just any home, but a seaside property 2 towns over, titled not in her name, but in the name of a man I'd never heard of. Her lover. I stared at the deed for a long time, downloaded off the county records cited too. 13 in the morning. His name was Aaron Wilkes. He was 10 years younger than her, a failed sculptor with no discernible income. And now, thanks to my inheritance, he owned a home with a private dock and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't confront her. I started to plan. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaner's shop in a less fashionable part of town. The rent was cheap, the neighbors invisible, and the walls thick enough to silence the worst of my thoughts. I began with what little I had left, just under $3,000 in a personal checking account Claire hadn't touched. My credit cards were frozen, my professional reputation bruised, and my spirit threadbare. But for the first time in years, I was truly alone with my mind, and it sharpened fast. I picked up freelance consulting work under a pseudonym. Small businesses, one-off projects, nothing that left a trail. I built a new name, D. Carr, short for Daniel Carrington, my grandfather's name. I kept it simple. I accepted wire payments through a separate LLC, paid my taxes quietly, and made no public noise. Within 4 months, I had 5 steady clients and a growing nest egg. By the end of the first year, I had saved enough to hire a private investigator. Not for Claire. For Aaron. His life was as hollow as it looked. No job. No history of financial stability. A string of evictions and failed ventures. He had met Claire at a gallery opening she had attended while I was in bed with the flu 2 years earlier. They had carried on for months. Cheap motels, cash withdrawals, gifts charged to my corporate Amex. The house had been purchased in his name deliberately because she had anticipated the optics of the divorce. She wanted it to look like she had walked away with nothing but dignity, while I kept the lion's share. But the house, the one built with my mother's memory, was her real prize. She visited it on weekends. Sometimes she stayed a week at a time. I waited. I studied property law. I took online courses in forensic accounting. I filed public record requests, combed through tax documents, and traced the wire transfer from my inheritance to the purchase of the house. My PI found a smoking gun. A notarized agreement between Claire and Aaron in which she referred to the money as a gift in exchange for the home's title. The dates aligned perfectly with our marriage and the transfer from my mother's estate. In legal terms, she had committed marital fraud. But I wasn't after a courtroom showdown. I wanted something slower, more precise. I started by contacting Aaron directly under another name. I posed as a real estate investor interested in waterfront properties. I told him I was building a private portfolio of high-value assets and had noticed his home. I offered an outrageous price, well above market value. He responded within hours. Of course he did. We met in person at a cafe near the pier. He was thin, balding, and wore a silk scarf like it made him interesting. He sipped a double espresso and spoke with the entitlement of someone who had never earned anything of real value. I listened, nodded, flattered. He confessed the house had been a gift from someone who owed him. I kept my smile neutral. Then I pulled out a manila folder, slid it across the table, and said, "You might want to read this before you start spending imaginary money." Inside were copies of bank records, the wire transfer from my mother's estate, and a timeline of his relationship with Claire, all neatly annotated and bound. At the back was a letter drafted by my attorney, outlining the consequences of continuing to hold stolen marital assets: civil fraud, replevin action, potential felony charges for misrepresentation in a property transaction. His hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. When he finally looked up, his mask had cracked. "What do you want?" he asked. I leaned in, voice low. "I want the house. Not the money. Not revenge. Just the house." He agreed 2 weeks later, after consulting with an attorney, a detail I doubted. I drew up a purchase contract for $1. The title was transferred to a new LLC I had created in my mother's name. Then I changed the locks, repainted the interior, and donated every stick of furniture Claire had ever purchased to a shelter for women escaping abusive relationships. She didn't find out until she drove up one Saturday morning and her key didn't work. She called me that night. Her voice was furious, clipped. "What did you do?" "I reclaimed what was mine," I said calmly. "You can't do that. You can't just take it." "No, Claire," I said, allowing myself the smallest smile. "You can't just take it. And now you can explain that to your lover, if he's still speaking to you." I hung up. I never heard Aaron's voice again, though I imagined his reaction was less explosive and more resigned. Like a man realizing too late that the free ride had ended and he'd always been a passenger, never the driver. Claire, however, did not vanish quietly. She attempted to contest the transfer, filing a civil complaint through a local attorney whose aggressive letters were more performative than substantive. The house, after all, was now legally mine, purchased back from her lover for a nominal sum, held in a trust tied to a corporation with a spotless paper trail. Every move I made had been backed by statute, reinforced by precedent. I responded once, just once, through my attorney, a 9-page motion to dismiss, complete with exhibits detailing her financial misdeeds, the breach of fiduciary duty during marriage, and the timeline of asset manipulation. Her case evaporated before it could reach a judge. I didn't celebrate. There was no champagne, no victory lap, just quiet. The kind that follows a storm that destroyed what once stood but cleared the space for something new. I spent a few days at the house alone, walking the empty halls, repainting the study in a rich forest green, replacing the curtains with gauzy linen that caught the morning light. I kept one photograph, my mother, sitting by the lake in the summer sun. I hung it in the foyer. Her house, again. By the second year, I had re-entered the consulting world under my real name, this time as an independent strategist for firms undergoing restructuring. The irony didn't escape me. I had been dismantled and rebuilt. Now, I was being paid to do the same for others. My work was quiet, elite, and highly sought after. My clients came by referral only. I charged more than I ever had and worked half as much. I picked my projects like I picked my company, carefully. Claire faded, eventually. She remarried someone older, less likely to be manipulated, more likely to control her. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that her second marriage was stable but distant. She lived in a modest condo now. Her days of long weekends by the bay were over. But I didn't watch her. I didn't stalk her social media or keep tabs on her through others. That chapter was sealed. Instead, I built something new, a life of intention. I began teaching a seminar once a month at the university. Ethics and corporate strategy. The irony, again, didn't escape me. But I was qualified. Experience has a way of legitimizing even the most bitter credentials. Occasionally, when I sat in that house by the water, watching the tide pull in and out, I thought of how close I had come to vanishing completely. Not just financially, but emotionally, existentially. Claire hadn't just taken my money. She had tried to erase me from my own life. But in doing so, she revealed who she truly was and freed me to become something else. Reinvention is not a matter of will. It's a matter of necessity. And revenge, when done right, isn't about destruction. It's about reclamation. The house never spoke of the war that had been waged to reclaim it. It just stood there, quietly, a monument to survival. And that was enough. For those who've been broken, rebuilt, and learned to move in silence, these stories are for you. Subscribe for more first-person tales of betrayal, revenge, and reinvention. Quiet power, legal precision, emotional truth. One story at a time.